We have seen about Selenium IDE for the first few classes, roughly around 2 classes. Later, in the last 2 classes, we discussed on Selenium RC along with Java concepts we have covered in the last 2 classes. From today, we would like to discuss about few Java basic concepts, and then we are gonna start about the WebDriver related stuff. So altogether, we are gonna start the actual core concepts of WebDriver from our classes, guys. Okay. As per the last class, we have seen about the Selenium RC. In the today's class, we would like to start discussing about a WebDriver. We know that the basic differences between Selenium RC and a WebDriver comes with a Selenium server. So let me make a note of basic differences between RC and a WebDriver. Generally, WebDriver is the one which is the latest component available in Selenium and which can directly communicate with the browser, which doesn't need any kind of an intermediate layer like a Selenium server to communicate with the browser. So, as it doesn't need any kind of an intermediate layer, the speed of execution in a WebDriver is a bit faster than Selenium RC. Okay, the speed of execution of the test script in WebDriver is a bit faster than Selenium RC. If we have written a code in Selenium RC, it took around 2 minutes for us to execute that. If you have written the same logic in a WebDriver, probably it might have finished in a couple of seconds. That's the basic difference. And in Selenium RC, we don't have a feature like actions class. The significance of an actions class is we can perform any kind of an UI action like drag and drop, scroll bar, those kind of a UI actions we can perform using a WebDriver, which is not possible using Selenium RC. Okay, and then another basic difference between these two is whenever we created an object to Selenium RC, it will launch the two browser instances, whereas WebDriver will launch only one browser instance. And another point is in RC, we need to create a command which will launch the browser. Whereas in a WebDriver, we no need to specify any kind of a command to launch the browser instance also. That's another basic difference. And one more major advantage of a WebDriver than compared to that of any other programming language is we can run the test scripts without launching the browser in a WebDriver, whereas which is not at all possible in Selenium RC. I can run my test scripts on a WebDriver without launching the browser. It means in an invisible mode, I can run all of my test scripts in WebDriver. Okay, in an invisible mode, I can run all of my test scripts in a WebDriver, which is not possible in Selenium RC. That's fine. Done, guys. So these are all the various things. Okay, these are all the various things which we have. Okay, and by default, using a WebDriver, we can run the script on Firefox browser and HTML unit driver. By default, using a WebDriver, I can run my test script on these two browsers itself. Firefox and a HTML unit driver, only I can run my test scripts. Okay, that's fine. This is the thing. And this is the stuff, guys. So, if I would like to run my script on Chrome browser, then we need to add an executable jar file related to that browser. So apart from Firefox and HTML unit driver, if you would like to run the test script on any other browser means we need to add the executable file, and then only we can run that particular script. Okay, without launching that executable file, or else without adding that executable file to our editor, it's not possible for us to run the test script. That's fine. These are all the basic differences, which we can call it as a theoretical differences between both RC and a WebDriver. Now, let's see the command-wise difference between both RC and a WebDriver. Command-wise difference between a RC and a WebDriver. If you remember, in Selenium RC, in order to perform action on any kind of an object, we use Selenium dot type. Here we specified the locator, and later we specified the value too. Right? Selenium dot type locator, and we specified the value too. Whereas moving on to the WebDriver, the complete syntax will vary. So this we can compare it as Selenium dot action within the braces locator. This is how we can specify in Selenium RC. Whereas moving on to the WebDriver, the complete out and out syntax got varied in a WebDriver. Okay, the complete out and out syntax got varied in a WebDriver. How come? How come the WebDriver syntax will vary? Driver dot find element. So here I am asking my WebDriver. So this is a WebDriver object dot find element. I'm just asking my WebDriver to identify an element by its ID property, or by its class property, or a name, title, type, value, and as well as a XPath and a CSS, link text, and partial link text. There are n number of ways we can identify an object. Okay, there are n number of ways we can identify in an object in a WebDriver. ID, name, class, XPath, CSS, and then link text, partial link text. So, using any one of these ways, we can identify an object in WebDriver. Okay, using any one of these ways, we can identify any object in a WebDriver. So, these are all the basic ways, guys. So, the syntax is driver dot find element. We are asking our WebDriver to identify an object. Element means an object which is having a link text as Ravi. And once you have identified that, then perform the desired action on that object. Okay, so the syntax will vary like this. First of all, we need to identify the object, and later we need to perform the action on that particular object. This is the syntax which we need to follow in a WebDriver. Okay, identify the object first and then perform the action on that particular object. Okay, this is the syntax. So the conclusion point is, wherever you would like to perform actions on any objects, so not only this particular object, if you would like to perform actions on any object, the syntax would be driver dot find elements by any one of these properties. Within the braces, we need to specify the property value dot desired action. So this is a common if you would like to perform actions on any objects. We know about an object, and generally one more thing is WebDriver will treat each and every object as a web element. Okay, we'll show you what exactly a web element will further, but each and every object information it will treat it as a web element. Okay, that's the reason if you observe, find element, find object by its id property. Find element, find object by its id property. That's fine. So we have seen this syntax. And then the next point over here is the basic command wise a comparison between a RC and a WebDriver. Okay, the basic command wise a comparison between a RC and a WebDriver. So the first action is open. Okay, in order to open an application, we can go for selenium.open command in RC. In WebDriver, we are going for driver.get command. Okay, driver.get is a command which we are using in a WebDriver to open that particular application. Okay, in order to open that particular application, we are just going for this get the commands. Okay, that's fine. Done. So get is a command which is used to open up an application. Whereas in order to enter a value to a text field, we used selenium.type command. Okay, we used selenium.type command, whereas in a WebDriver, we are using send keys command. In RC, we used a type command to enter a value, whereas in a WebDriver, we are using a send keys command to enter a value. Okay, whereas we are using a send keys command to enter a value. Whereas the same way, okay, in the same way, if in order to select a value from a drop down, I am using a select command in Selenium RC, whereas in WebDriver, okay, whereas in a WebDriver, we are using a send keys command. So it means the same send keys command we are using in both the RC and WebDriver to perform the action, which is to enter a value and to select a value from a drop down. Okay, to enter a value and to select a value from a drop down, we are using the same command. Okay, that's fine. So the basic command which we need to remember is send keys is a command which we are using to enter a value and to select a value from a drop down. Okay, that's fine. And then the next point is in order to launch a browser in RC we used dot start command. Okay, in RC we used the dot start command, whereas in WebDriver we are using in WebDriver we are not using any command, sorry. So in a WebDriver we are not using any command. Okay, the reason is WebDriver itself is designed in such a way that whenever we have created an object to our WebDriver, automatically it will launch a browser. Okay, automatically will launch a browser. So it means we no need to write down any specific commands to launch the browser in a WebDriver. In order to close the browser, we used selenium.close or else selenium.stop command, and even here also we are using driver.close and as well as a driver.stop commands. Okay, these two are one and the same. And one more thing is to perform a click operation, we used a click command in RC. The same click command we are using in a WebDriver too. Okay, so we are just using the same click command in both a RC and a WebDriver too. Fine, guys, done up to here. So this is the way. These are all the basic command-wise comparisons between a RC and a WebDriver. Am I clear for everybody so far? Both the theoretical comparisons and as well as command-wise comparisons between a RC and a WebDriver. Or do you people have any questions for me? Am I clear for you all? Fine. So Amar and the remaining people, Lata, okay, Lata, Deepthi, Priyanka, Niharika. So I'm clear for you all, right? Good. Fine. So once we are done with this one, okay, once we are done with this one, okay, cool. So once we are done with this one, the next point what exactly we need to do is we need to look into the configuration required for WebDriver. Okay, the configuration required for WebDriver. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. That's fine, guys. So, what exactly the configuration required for WebDriver? The basic configuration required for RC and a WebDriver is one and the same. Okay, the basic configuration required for both the RC and a WebDriver is almost one and the same. Then, what is the difference between a RC and a WebDriver then? Okay, what is the basic difference between RC and a WebDriver? If you remember, the major difference is the Selenium server itself. So for RC, the Selenium server is there. For WebDriver, the Selenium server won't be there and remaining configuration is one and the same. So Eclipse editor is required, JUnit jar file is required, JXL jar file is required, and the complete Selenium Java client drivers is required for us. We'll show you what exactly complete a set of Java client drivers. So go back to your Eclipse editor and right now I'm creating a new Java project where in which I'm naming it as W Niharika. Okay, I just named that particular project as a Niharika and I clicked on finish button. A new project got created with a name as a Niharika. Let's try to add all the jar files. Build path, configure build path, add external jars, from where add JUnit, JXL first, and later let's add a Selenium Java client drivers, these two jar files. Not only these two jar files, internally it is having a libs folder. If you navigate to the libs folder, too many jar files are there. To work on a WebDriver, even we need to add all these jar files. So I just added all the jar files and I clicked on OK. So the required configuration got created. Now I'm just creating a small package with a name as Java. Okay, I would like to create a small examples on Java. That's the reason I have created a JavaScript. And here I'm creating another package with the name as a scripts. And generally we need to follow certain naming conventions while creating a class, a package and all those stuff. See here, whenever I entered my package name as an uppercase, here a warning message it is stating that package name usually start with a lower cases itself. Just start the package name with a lower case. Where in this scripts package, I would like to write down all my WebDriver related programs. So create a first new Java class web1. This is my WebDriver first program. Click on a finish. I just created a new class for that. Now I need to create an object to WebDriver. If you remember in Selenium RC, we created an object to default Selenium class, right? We have created an object to a default Selenium class and from where we just used that particular stuff by passing a parameters to that particular class, or else as it is having a default constructor, we are just taking Okay, we are just creating an object to a class by passing all those parameters required to the class. Okay, so just creating an object to a class in Selenium RC, we executed and we have written our script successfully. Whereas moving on to a web driver is an interface. Okay, it's not a Java class. A web driver is an interface. What does it means? Okay, what exactly it means? Okay, that's fine. So, what exactly an interface is? Why we are using this interface concept? See, the WebDriver itself was developed using this interface concepts itself. Okay, interface is a concept in Java. WebDriver was designed using this concept. Okay, so here let's see about the interface. Using an interface, we can create set of rules for behavior of an application. How my application needs to behave, I can create a set of rules for my application. Okay, how my application flow should be. So in order to create a set of rules, basically we are going for this interface concept. Interface looks like a class itself, but it's not a class. Okay, it seems like a class, but it's not a class. When you implement the interface, okay, when you implement that interface in any class, then all those interface rules must be applied on a class. One small point which we need to remember over here is whenever we have a defined set of rules in an interface means some class need to implement those rules. The best example, let me give you a small example over here. Assume that I'm just working as a developer on a project and I have around four team members who are working as assistant developers. So here if you observe, I have created an interface. Okay, I have created an interface like the various naming conventions for all the methods in my entire projects. In my entire project. So I have defined that. So what it will happen, who are working under me and who are working for an Infosys project. Assume that we are all working for an Infosys project. Who are working under me under the Infosys project, they need to follow the set of rules which I have created under the interface. Okay, under the interface. The same way here also, WebDriver is an interface. Okay, which are all the classes which want to work on a WebDriver related stuff, they need to implement all the methods, not a few methods, all the methods or all the rules defined in the interface. How come? Let me show you a small example for that. Okay, how come? Let me show you a small example for that. So the best example is I'm creating a new class or else a new interface. Interface of one, okay, wherein which I'm just trying to write down the login method code. Public, I'm returning it as a void login and I am trying to write down the code. Observe here, I'm just trying to write down the code as a int a string b. Say I have written a code. Whereas on the method it is throwing an error message suggesting me that remove the body. As you are on an interface, you just can define the names. It's not possible for you to define any kind of logics for all those methods over here. In my class, I have in my interface, I have defined only one login method. For suppose I'm creating a new class, interface implements one is my class. whereas in my class I'm just implementing. So the syntax is class name space implements interface name. Okay, this is my class name space implements is the keyword which we need to use, okay, in order to implement the interfaces. The interface whatever we have created is a inter one. Immediately my class it is throwing an error message. Whenever I am placing my cursor on that error message, it is suggesting me that add unimplemented methods. So the method whatever we have created on the interface is a login. So public void, I'm creating it as a login, under which system.out.println, this is a login method. Okay, system.out.println, this is a login method. I just created that stuff. Okay, I just created that stuff, system.out.println as a login. I just specified that. For suppose in the interface, if I have again added another method like a public void logout, and if you observe the class whatever it has implemented, it should implement all the methods. As another method got created to that interface, for sure we need to write down the code for logout as well, like system.out.println, this is a logout, like that we need to implement, okay, like that whatever the methods, okay, we have specified under the interface, whatever the class it is implementing that interface, we need to call all those methods, or else we need to write down the logic for all those methods. Fine, done up to here. So the other point what exactly we need to discuss about this interface is, let's see here what exactly the interface stuff. So in short, if you implement an interface on a class, then you must have a overridden. So overridden we are gonna see in a further classes. Okay, that's fine. So generally the interface will be called in any class using an implements a keyboard. Okay, and then the basic rules which contains for an interface are: interface cannot hold a constructor, interface cannot hold any static keywords. Okay, we cannot create any objects. See here, you cannot create objects on an interface. So all these are set of rules under the interface. I'm just updating all those stuff here. Okay, I'm just updating all the stuff here. And then WebDriver is an interface. Okay, WebDriver is an interface. That's fine, guys. So WebDriver itself is an interface. Okay, WebDriver itself is an interface. Various classes like Firefox, Chrome, IE are implementing this interface. Okay, various classes are implementing this particular interface. That's fine. If you clearly observe in our current example, interface 1 is a interface whatever we have created, and interface implements is a class wherein which all the methods are defined for the interface 1. So how we need to work on this one in future, if at all I would like to use these methods, means create a class again, calling. I'm just creating a class with a main method now. Here, what I am trying to do now means I would like to create object to interface implements of one class. Okay, I would like to create an object to interface implements a class. Whereas to this particular class, if you clearly observe that this class is implementing the interface. So this is the syntax. So here interface name space obj name is equal to new class name which is implementing the interface, with which we are stating that this is the interface name and this is the class which is implementing that interface. We are creating an object to this particular class. So if you write now obj name dot the method as a login and obj name dot method as a logout, and now when I run this particular script, as we have created an object to interface implements a class of 1. When I run this particular class, what are all the logics we have defined in this particular class will be accessed. What are all the logics we have defined in this particular class will be accessed. So this line is stating that this is an interface name, this is an object name, which is we are creating an object to a class where in which we have created an interface. That's the reason this is how all these methods were going to access. The same way, if you clearly compare this one with our web driver is an interface wherein which Firefox driver is a class which is implementing that. So the simple syntax, how come the WebDriver will change means WebDriver space obj name is equal to new Firefox driver. This is how my WebDriver browser syntax will also be changed. That's fine. So this is about an interface. Now moving on to our example for WebDriver creation. Close all other scripts. We have seen about an interface introduction. The reason is our WebDriver itself is an interface. And even further going, we are going to discuss a couple of more Java concepts simultaneously with our WebDriver. Okay, so we are not discussing Java concepts first and then the WebDriver concepts later. Simultaneously, Java concept along with the WebDriver concept we are going to discuss. And even in further classes, we are going to discuss about inheritance as well. Okay, that's fine. Now let's try to create an object to WebDriver. The reason is in Selenium RC we used to have a here default Selenium space obj name is equal to new default Selenium, and here we just passed 4 different parameters as well. The same way here in a WebDriver, we need to create an object to WebDriver. The name is a WebDriver itself is equal to new Firefox driver. I just imported the required packages. So in order to import the required packages, the keyboard shortcut is Control plus Shift plus O, which will import the required packages. So here WebDriver is an interface, whereas a Firefox driver is a class which is implementing this particular interface. Okay, Firefox driver is a class which is implementing this particular interface. That's fine. Later, let's try to run this script first of all. Okay, let me run this particular script. Right click, run as a Java application. I'm just trying to run this script as a Java application. If you clearly observe, it's gonna launch a browser. Okay, it's gonna launch a plain browser. It doesn't open any applications. The point why I have conveyed here is in WebDriver, when we created an object, automatically it is launching the browser. So how come? There might be a constructor within this Firefox driver or any driver which is going to launch the browser. Okay, so we can add a point stating that, see here, there might be a constructor within the class which will launch the browser when object to that class got created. Right? So in yesterday's class, someone asked me how exactly we are using these constructors. This is the best example for that. Okay, this is the best example for that. The reason is we are not writing any explicitly any command to launch a browser. Immediately after creation of an object, a browser is launching. If you remember the constructor definition yesterday, if you remember the constructor definition, whatever the piece of code is there in a constructor will be executed at the time of object creation. See here, I have created an object to my WebDriver. Automatically, a browser is launching means a piece of a code is there in a constructor which is taking care in order to launch a browser. That's fine. So this is how, based on our requirement in our real time, we may write down the logics in a constructor. Okay, we may write down the logics in a constructor. That's fine. After that, the next point, what exactly I need to do over here means, if you remember the old document wherein which we compared between both RC and a WebDriver, the command wise a comparison, in order to open up an application, we are using a driver.get command. So here, driver.get specify the application URL. I'm just specifying my application URL as a bing.com. Okay, I just specified my application URL as a bing.com. And later, after opening the application, I would like to perform some operation on the bing.com. Okay, so here on a Firefox browser, I would like to perform action like entering of a value into the search feed. Right click, inspect element with a firework. It's been having an ID property, copy that. Go back to the program, driver dot find elements by dot ID. Specify the ID property. I would like to enter a value into the field. I'm going for a send keys command. Send the keys. The value which I need to specify over here is Priyanka. Okay, Priyanka. So I just specified a value into that particular field as a Priyanka. And later, after entering this particular value, see, we have identified this object with the ID property. We know that we can identify any object with the various kinds of properties, right? We can identify any kind of an object in a WebDriver with the various properties, like, let me add a point, with various properties like ID, class name, expert, CSS, link text, and partial link text. So these are all the various ways we can identify any particular object in a WebDriver. Okay, these are all the various ways using which we can identify any particular object in our WebDriver. So here, initially identified with an ID property, get the class name for that object, go back here, enter driver dot find element. See here, in order to find an element, we have two different commands: find element and find elements. Find element, which is a web element. Web element means it's a single object. List of web elements, group of objects. Find element is a command which is used to identify a single object. Find elements is a command which is used to identify group of objects present in a web page. That's the basic difference between these two. But right now, I would like to perform an operation on a search feed. I can go for find element alone. By dot, I captured the class name, enter the class name, dot send the keys. In this, I would like to enter Deepthi over here. And later, the same object is having a name property. Get the name property. Go back. Driver dot find element by dot name. And here, I would like to go for, and here in this case, I would like to go for Sri Lata. Okay, I would like to enter a Sri Lata. And later, we can identify the same object by writing an XPath and a CSS also, for which I just opened my Selenium IDE, right click, show all available commands, assert element present. Why I am using Selenium IDE? If you remember, using Selenium IDE, simply we can generate an XPath and a CSS. Right now, I copied my XPath, Go back here. Driver dot find element by dot expat, and I am entering Niharika. See, I would like to enter the expat first, and then in the same case I would like to enter Niharika into that field. Fine, I just specified that one too, Niharika as well. After specifying that, the last one is we can identify the same object with its CSS property also. This is the CSS property. Copy that. Go back here. Driver dot find element by dot CSS. So by dot CSS dot send keys. Finally, I would like to enter Surendra into this field. Okay, I just entered Surendra into this field. Let me run my program and check out how this script is going to work. Run as a Java application. It's been executing as a Java application. Okay, let's see how this is gonna execute. See here, if you clearly observe, all the values got appended one after another. Okay, all the values got appended one after another. So our intention is to enter the values. We thought that it will enter a value one after another, whereas here it appended all the values. Appended means it just added all the values to that particular field. But I don't want to write my command in such a way. I would like to enter a Priyanka first and then delete this field and then enter Deepthi and then delete this field and then enter Ramya. Like that, I would like to enter all the values over here. And if you clearly observe, this is the browser even which was launched in a minimized mode. The maximized mode for this browser is this one, and it launched the browser in a minimized mode. Let's write a command which will maximize the browser. And one more small point which we need to remember is the syntaxes whatever we have followed in RC are completely differ in a WebDriver. Driver dot manage is a class dot windows dot maximize. See here, this is the command which is used to maximize your browser. And after entering Priyanka, I would like to clear that field. So this is the object location, right? Driver dot find element by dot is a object location. So dot clear is a command which I can use to clear that field. Clear is a command usually which we are using in a WebDriver to clear a value from a text field. In order to clear a value from a text field, we are using a dot clear command. Object location dot clear, which is used to clear the value on a particular field. Object location dot clear is a command which is used to clear the value from that particular field. Now let's run this program. Run as a Java application. I'm just executing my program now. See, the window got maximized by my WebDriver. All the values got entered and deleted, and finally Surendra got left into that particular field. And my intention is I would like to click on a search button here. Okay, I would like to click on a search button here. How can I click on a search button? We know that object name dot click is a command which I can use in order to perform a click operation, right? So here, get the object name. Right click on a search button, inspect element with a firebug. It is having an ID property. See, driver dot find element by dot ID. It's a drop down location, right? See, the major advantage of a WebDriver is whenever we place cursor on any command, it will suggest the return type. Driver dot find element, we know that this is the command which is used to identify an object. So the find element is returning an object. That's the reason whenever we place a cursor, it is suggesting the starting keyword, we can treat it as a return type. Okay, the starting keyword we can treat it as a return type, guys. Okay, the starting keyword we can treat it as a return type. So in this particular case, the starting keyword over here is a web element, which we can treat it as a return type. Okay, this web element is a return type for this particular statement. So web element space search is equal to, and web element we need to import that control plus shift plus O. So what I did over here, driver dot find element is an object location. I can directly specify dot click command, or else I stored this object information in a web element. Web element is the one which will hold object information. In web element, it will hold object information only. Okay, I just asked it to store the object information itself. Okay, in the web element we store the object information, hence it is storing an element. Now search dot click is similar to that of driver dot find element dot click. Both are one and the same. These two commands are one and the same. The reason is, in search we stored up to here only. Driver dot find element dot go only we stored in a search. Search dot click is a performing the click operation, or a driver dot find element dot click is also performing the search operation itself. Okay, so this is the stuff. That's fine, guys. Below and this command are one and the same. Am I clear for everybody so far? Or do you people have any questions for me? Is this point clear for you all? Fine. Done, guys. So we just performed a click operation. Now run this script. Right click, run as a Java application. Okay, I just started it as a Java application. So it's been executing that. See here, the search results are got displayed over here. Okay, the search results are got displayed over here. That's fine. So this is the way how can we perform actions. Okay, this is the way how can we perform a search operation. Now what additionally I would like to do means, using a driver class we can perform any kind of an operation on a browser. The various kinds of operations we can perform. Okay, the various kinds of operations we can perform over here are, see here, driver dot get. I can open the application. Okay, I can open the application and I can get the class. I can get the current URL. I can get the page source. I can get the page title, and I can get the window handles and all those things. These are all the various commands. So I am going for get the current URL. On which page it is, this current URL is a command which will get that particular page URL. And when I place my cursor on that, the return type it is suggesting as a string. So I am storing it as a string. URL is equal to system.out.println URL is plus URL. The same way, driver.get, not only the URL, I can get the page source also. Page source, again the return type would be a string itself. String source is equal to, and here again I am printing that system.out.println page source is plus source. That's fine. The same way, driver.get, and again the various kinds of a methods is a title. Okay, again the title return type would be a string itself. So string title, this is equal to system.out.println title is plus title. That's fine. I just captured the title of the web page now. But the thing is, after clicking on a button and in order to navigate to the next page, it is taking some time. So I am adding just a Java command which is thread.sleep, okay, which is a thread.sleep, and I am specifying some time here, okay, and I am specifying some time here, okay, and I am specifying some time over here, which is just 3000, okay. So I just specified to wait for 3000 milliseconds. It waited over there. Done, guys. Now let me run this program and check out what exactly the output it is returning to the console. Okay, let's see this. It's been executing the program, and the search results I got are displayed. That's fine. And if you go back to your Selenium IDE, these are values got returned. Title is this one. The above one is a page source. We asked it to return the page source, and it returned the page source as well. Okay, whatever the one we have specified, it gathered all the information. Okay, that's fine. Is this point clear for you all?
This is Lata. I have one doubt.
Yeah, Lata, please go ahead.
Actually, we are identifying the elements with ID, whatever it is. Suppose in the next run, you have already written the script and you have to run it some 10 times with each iteration. Okay. So in the next run, if this ID is got changed by the development team, then how do you handle it?
Generally,
Because the script might be very large and it's very difficult to find out which IDs have been changed and all those things, right?
see, generally, in order to handle such kind of a scenarios, we are going for a page object model. Okay,
Okay.
page object
Okay.
model is a concept wherein which we are storing all the object information in a file. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
wherein which we are just, if at all any object property got changed, simply change the information in a file. Automatically, it will reflect in all the places.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
And one
And
more
one
thing,
more thing is,
yeah, please
yeah,
go ahead.
please. One more thing is we are mostly concentrating on Firefox. Suppose will it happen that this particular code will work or this particular test case will pass in this Firefox and it doesn't pass in the Chrome or IE, something like that?
No, there might be some scenarios, but
Mm.
majority of the cases, 99% of the applications will work on all the browsers. And even
Okay.
this is the first test script whatever we have created. That's the reason we started discussing on a Firefox, and that too
Okay.
Firefox is a default browser which was supported by our WebDriver. That's the reason we are on this one. In our next class, we are gonna see the various browsers and a few more scenarios as well. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
And then in order to validate some data, or else we do have some concepts, guys, like in order to validate some link, or else in order to validate some text. So based on that particular requirement, we need to validate that stuff. For suppose if at all you are looking for an object in a web page, in those cases I can go for a is displayed command. If at all I would like to go for a specific text in a web page, I can go for an assert class. I can compare that particular text. Based on our requirement, we are going to choose those commands. And one more thing is, today is our first class in WebDriver, and we are just discussing the basic concepts. We started discussing the basic concepts. Slowly, we are going to work on the WebDriver, and whatever the concepts you are asking, we are going to cover all those concepts in our classes. And if possible, just make a note of all those lists whatever you are having questions. If I am not covering those one, just address me. And one more thing is, as of now we are writing all the programs in our Java classes itself. As we are writing our programs in our Java classes, that's not a possible for me to see whether my script got executed successfully or not in a Eclipse editor. In a browser itself, if the specified actions got performed, we can confirm that the script got executed successfully. If at all any failures are there in my Eclipse console, it will display the reason behind the failure. Slowly in our further classes, we are going to discuss about how to write down the JUnit test cases and a test ng cases, where in which we are gonna it's clearly display whether the test script got executed successfully or it got a failed. Such kind of a detailed test execution status will be specified by my JUnit and as well as